Hi, I'm Ted Williams, and welcome to The Professor's The After Show. Our conversation continues about the economy and unemployment. So, gentlemen, as we were coming in even to tape this morning, we had to navigate through traffic for a city job fair. And it looked like, as you mentioned, you thought the president was here because the lines were going around the block, people looking for jobs. Unemployment is high, and people are really, they're struggling, and and I've heard this oftentimes. Many jobs, you hear, say a Walmart opens up and they've got 1,000 openings and they get 10,000 applications. What's going on, and what do we have to do, I think, to get folks more employed?
I think a lot of it is structural unemployment, and those jobs are gone. They're not coming back. So we've got to retrain and re-educate and just retrain people for the jobs that are available.
There are other problems too. I mean, usually in a flexible labor market, we're not like Europe where we're so highly regimented, but the problem is that if you're $50,000 underwater on your house, you can't afford to go ahead and leave. Like when the economy was booming and your house was going up in value, you can't go in, cash out, move to another city. You are going to try and find something with that in economy. And until we really resolve that housing crisis, that provides a really big anchor to anyone that's considering trying to opt out, if they have the skills, to go to a national or regional labor market rather than just a local.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And interestingly enough, it does lock you down. I also think about the kinds of jobs that are out there. The federal government is the largest employer in the United States, with the government as a whole, so federal, state, and local. So there was this old thing, my grandfather used to always tell me, son, get a good government job, right? Because the government jobs were stable, and it wasn't a high turnover, that sort of thing. So I would imagine that with people looking for work now, the government is really a great place for folks to go, but then it exacerbates the other problem that we talked about earlier with our federal debt, right? And the amount of spending that we're doing. So, you're in the private sector. You're from the private sector. Tell me that it's good out there. Tell me that people should run out there and.
It's not so good. Primarily because I think corporations, having gone through the recent recession, are very cautious about their hiring practices. Even though I think earlier someone mentioned that the corporate profits are up substantially, they're still very, very cautious about how much they hire and what kind of investments they're making into human capital. I'm not sure how much that's going to change in the near future. There are some potential long-term positives, but I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we're going to continue to be more and more dependent on government to provide bread for the people. Somewhere we have to get back to making things and creating jobs that are not dependent on the government.
I'll go a pro approach. That many say that the fact that our recessions have been dampened from the roller coaster rides we used to have been by the growth in terms of government jobs, and that people do request more services now than they ever had in the past. That's one part of it. The other section simply is that within the government spending that we do see taking place, we have this underlying issue of consumer sentiment, right? So I don't know if you know this, but there are only 2 countries in the world that actually have a debt ceiling. Us and someplace in Europe, Denmark or somewhere. And so why do we have a debt ceiling fight? You can go in and Google up right now and see a famous speech by Ronald Reagan that says you should never put the country in the threat of a debt ceiling and being in default. And the only reason we did it was the politics of it. We've done it over 75 times from the 1950s onward, more frequently since then. And if it comes down to that game, again, we're one of only 2 countries that do this, that even bother with it. It was what roiled the markets. If you go in and research it on Google, they will tell you the financial executives did it only because of what happened in Congress. And if you look at the consumer sentiment report that comes out from the University of Michigan and sees everything was really great, everybody was optimal, things were looking good, then all of a sudden everybody threatened, oh, the government can't pay its bills, we're running out of money. And it tanked right at the end of August, and things looked up again earlier this year with some choices and options for president. If the consumer's not willing to spend, no matter how much marketing you get out there, it's not going to happen.
And you know, the government has really caused a lack of confidence in investors, and so they don't know what tax rates will be. That's why there was this whole sort of angst around the election, and then obviously the fiscal cliff, that sort of thing. So I think that's a very important point that you make. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've got to talk about collectively what we can do, right? We talked about training, we talked about manufacturing.
One of the other areas I think we have to address is around government waste. You don't get the same dollar value for what you spend on the corporate side than you do on the government side. And I really think, and everybody makes promises every 4 years about they're going to clean up the amount of waste in government, but again, hard choices that have to be made about where those dollars are spent and what we're getting back for them.
And I think that's a great place to stop. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ted Williams. Join us every Sunday morning at 10:30 on WYCC PBS Chicago for The Professors. I'll see you then.